Hi everyone, you're welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial, I'll be sharing with you all how to cut this circle shirt gown with a bishop collar. It has a ruffle sleeve and also a gathers at the hem of this gown. So if you have a proper view of this gown you see right here, you realize that the button actually stops on the half length. So the other buttons you see from beneath this half length is actually for fancy, or decoration. So if this sounds like something you're interested in learning how to do, continue watching, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So let's just get started. So to recreate this dress, I'm actually making use of 3 yards of plain crepe fabric. Okay, so you can see my fabric right here all spread out, and the next thing I'll do now is to fold this fabric. Now I'm going to fold this fabric in a triangular or in a cone shape, right, making sure that this border at this end meets the other border. So this is actually how to fold for a circle or a flake, a fret, right? So you're going to fold, and I will go ahead now and arrange this properly, and I'll make sure that the two borders align properly, right? So I want to achieve a full circle effect right here. That is why you see me folding this. Okay, so after folding to achieve this triangular shape, I went ahead now to pin. So please, you have to arrange your fabric properly. Make sure there are no folds underneath. Okay, so make sure it's straight. And immediately I achieved all of this, I went ahead to divide my shoulder of 16 inches into 2, and right there I am going to mark 8 inches. So you're just going to continue measuring until you get up to the point that accommodates your shoulder measurements. All right, so when I made that mark, I use this my ruler now to connect that point into a straight line. So the next I'm going to do right here now is to actually mark my button allowance. Remember that this shirt gown actually has a button in front, right? So from the edge of that my fabric towards that side that is entirely closed, I started marking 2 inches from that top line. That first line I marked at the top of this my fabric, which is my shoulder line. I started marking these 2 inches all the way downward to the end or the hem of this fabric which I folded. So after doing this, now I'm going to come to those points and now use my ruler and connect them into a straight line. So just note that this part is slanty. Okay, so now under my shoulder line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and this 1 inch is for my shoulder slope or my shoulder slant, which is a necessity, right? So I connected it to this other side just this way, and I'm just going to follow that shape or that line, and I'm going to cut it out. So after pinning this, I'll just go ahead and do just that. So now I'm done cutting this, and right now all my measurements are starting from this top part of this my gown. So from the close end of this my fabric, I went ahead to also get this my shoulder measurement again, which is 8 inches. I made this mark right there, and exactly from that point where I marked my 8 inches, I'm actually going to mark my armhole length. So before I go proceed to do this, I have to subtract 1 inch from all the measurements or the vertical measurements which I've been putting right here. Okay, so you can see I placed 1 inch above my fabric. Okay, under my shoulder I place it above, and I just marked 7.5 inches for my armhole length. Okay, so I'm going to connect this point on my shoulder all the way down to this my armhole length, which I just marked right here. So I will now use my chalk to curve this out. All right, so while actually drafting your shirt, it's not really necessary to come in on the half of your armhole by half of an inch and doing all of that. So you can just do this and you are good to go. Okay, again, from the end or the center front of this my fabric, I marked 3 inches. That is for my neck width, right? So for my neck there, from there I marked 4 inches. So if you watch closely, I didn't subtract anything from here while imputing my neck depth. Okay, so my neck depth was placed on my shoulder and I marked 4 inches, and I went ahead now to connect my neck width to my neck depth in a block form before I use my curve rule now to create a curve, because it's actually, the neckline is actually meant to be round. Okay, so and exactly that my armhole length, I'm going to divide my bust circumference by 4 exactly on that point, that line there, and whatever I have, I'm going to mark it right there. So my bust circumference is 42 inches. All right, so I'm going to divide that by 4, and what I had there was 10.5 inches. So while I'm imputing this my bust circumference. Watch closely. I am not starting from the edge of my fabric. I'm actually starting from that line which I marked as my button allowance. Okay, so I marked 10.5 inches from that line, and the remaining inches I had extra at that point was 2 inches. So I'm going to use the entire allowance right there. Okay, so the next thing was for me to actually impute the length of this my gown. So my table was quite too small, and it was unable to accommodate both the filming and everything. It was slippery because this fabric had this lushness, right? So I had to transfer to the floor. I had to finish up everything I was doing on the floor, and you can see it's still very much visible right here. So placing my tape 1 inch above from that my shoulder line, I went ahead to mark my gown length of 42 inches. So what I want you now to pay attention to is the way I'm actually going to be marking this 42 inches. So you see that I'm shifting my tape from the top part. I'll shift it and I'll mark for the length or the full length of this my gown. So this is how you continue shifting your tape and moving in a semicircle manner, okay, until you make your dots all the way through to both ends. Then after that, you can now use your hand and now connect all of these dots you made together. So it's 100% okay to actually use your free hand with your chalk to connect all of these points together. And don't forget that for this, the full length of this my gown, I actually added extra 1/2 inch for joining allowance to the gathered part of this gown, which will be joining later on. Okay, so after all of that, like I said earlier, I'll cut off from the full length of this my gown. So this is what I have left. So here is a full circle flay, and remember this is just for the front part of this our gown. So you can actually maintain this full circle effect, or you can actually reduce this a bit. So you can reduce this by actually coming in by 5, 6, 7, 8, depending on how many inches extra you want inward from the hem this way. But at the top part, please don't tamper with the armhole area. Okay, so you see how I actually cut this off and it blended on that armhole area. The next thing I cut out was my neckline, and on that my button allowance line, I went ahead to notch. So this is for me to be able to indicate where my button allowance is. I cut off the armhole and also separated this at the middle, you can see. So right now I have 2 pieces, no longer 1 piece. Now from my shoulder, I'm actually going to mark my half length plus 1/2 inch, which is 17.5 inches, right? So I went ahead now to make this more visible with my chalk, and I'm just going to notch that line on that point, or make a tiny cut. So that is where my pocket will be starting from. Okay, so after that, now I'm just going to work on the back piece, because we are done drafting for the front piece. Okay, so for the back piece, I'm actually going to fold this a normal fold, which we fold like the normal fold, right? This is because the circle effect we want has been achieved at the front part of the gown, so we are just going to use it to trace out. Okay, so it's more like a template, so just fold it into 2 just the normal way. Then I got the front part of this my shirt, and I just folded in that button allowance. But in a way, if you're finding it a bit difficult to fold in your button allowance, you can just make sure that the 2 inches button allowance you have is outside. Okay, just the way I've placed mine this way, so it shouldn't be exactly from the edge or the center front of this our second fold for the back shirt. I don't know if you understand what I mean, right? So after doing this, now from the shoulder, on that highest point on your shoulder, you're just going to go up by 2 inches, just as I've done right here. So from that 2 inches again, you're going to mark extra 1 inch, because we'll be actually marking our shoulder slant of 1 inch, right? So you come down, you go up by 1 inch, and after that you're going to come down by 1 inch. So when you come down by 1 inch, it's going to be exactly on that first line we marked earlier. So in a slanty way, just as we did for the front part, you're going to connect from that line to that upper line. So I believe that everything I'm doing right here is very clear and not confusing at all. So I went ahead now to cut off that part. So the next I'm going to do now is to actually fold this piece I have right here, making sure that it stops exactly on the shoulder of this our front shirt, dress or gown. So you're going to fold, irrespective of how it may be or look, try and fold and make sure that it sits on top of the shoulder. You can see right there. Okay, So when it stops on that shoulder, the neck width which you are having right there, you are going to also duplicate it on this piece which you folded. Then from that folded part, I'm going to make a cut. Okay, from the part where I folded from the top, I made a little cut. Then on that part where my neck width for the front stopped, I'm going to also make a cut. Okay, so just like that, from that part you're just going to form a neckline and just cut it out this way. Please, it shouldn't be more than or less than, just exactly what I showed you right here. So after that, now I'll just go ahead now and now cut out the armhole and cut out the sides. So by the time you do this, the back is automatically going to be in form of a flare, because we already achieved that with the front part of our dress, so there is no cause for alarm. Okay, so the front part of our gown has already helped us achieve this our circle effect. So the next thing is just to trace it out. So I'm just tracing it out exactly the way it's placed on the back part. And again, on my half length, I went ahead to notch, irrespective that the shoulder of the back is higher. This is because this is a shirt. It's a normal thing to be done. If not, you're not going to like the outcome if you don't really do this, to be honest with you. So the next I'm going to do now is to cut out for the pocket of this gown. So I have this piece which I'm going to fold into 4. So I will have my first fold and I'm going to fold again. So I'm going to fold this into 4, and here it is. And I just went ahead to cut out this. I want to have this this square shape, right? So that's why I'm actually cutting this out, because I actually used this fabric initially to cut out for a flare. So I just had to cut this to have a block form or square shape. So that's by the way. So now from the top part of this piece I have right here, I'm just simply going to mark about 9 inches. So from the edge, from the center front of, I'm going to go in or mark 10 inches. Okay, so after that I'll just go ahead and pin this piece because it was really slippery. Okay, so I want to pin this, right? So the next I'm going to do is to connect all of these points I've made right here using my ruler, of which I'll now use my scissors to trace out the shape which I already formed right here or marked right here. Okay, so after this, now this is what I have. So I'll come to the 2 edges of this particular pocket I have right here. I'm just going to mark 1 inch inward this way, and I'll do the same for this other side. So I will actually try to make a curve right here. So this whole stuff I'm doing right here is actually to achieve a curve. Okay, so I'm actually going to cut. You can see the way I pointed. So this is how I'm going to cut. But while I was cutting, my spirit led me to do a deeper curve, so I had to do just that. But the whole thing is just to achieve a curve which is perfect for the pocket. Okay, so that's just it, just a curve right there. So that is just it. I realized that this part of my pocket wasn't straight. I had to cut this to make it straight, as you can see right here. So by the time I unpin this and separate all of these pieces, I'm going to have 4 pieces of this, front and the back, and for the 2 sides as well. So why facing? So here now is the front part of this my gown. So on this button side, you can see the button allowance which I have right there. I notched. I'm actually going to fold in about 1/2 inch because I want to get rid of these rough edges. So I'll do it for the 2 front sides of this shirt, and after that, this is what I am going to have. So I did it and I ironed this generously, and you can see also for the pockets I also did the same thing. So I am going to get my pockets and I'm going to face my pockets right side facing my actual fabric. So from the half length, that part on the half length where I gave this cut, I'm going to pin the right side of this my pocket to the right side of this my fabric, as you can see I've done right here. Okay, so it's obvious that the right side of my pocket is shiny, so I placed it and I'm going to stitch from that my half length all the way to the end, and by the time you turn it over, this is what it's going to look like, right? So after that, now I'm just going to get the 2 front parts of this my gown. I'm going to also place them right sides facing each other, right? So I'll make sure the button allowance part where I notched aligns, and I'll pin. So the next thing I will do after doing this is actually to pin this from the top part all the way to the hem of this gown. So from the shoulder now, I'm going to get my half length and add extra half of an inch, but because by the time I stitch the two shoulders with half of an inch, it's going to become 17 inches. So now I'm going to make a stitch now from that my half length right there on that point, very close to that hem line. I'm going to stitch all the way to the ends of this my gown. So guys, I've done that and you can see what is looking like, and I've also stitched my pocket so you can see what it also looks like. So the next thing now is for me to actually use one part of this my shirt to cover or overlap or fold on top of the other one. So you can actually decide how to do this, whether I want the right side to be on top of the left or the left to be on top of the right, but at the end of the day, just make sure that the two button allowance are actually the same thing. Okay, so now I'm using the right side to actually place on top of the left side. So you can see I made a chalk on that my button allowance, and that chalk I made will stop exactly on top of that button allowance notch I made for the other side. So I don't know if my explanation is really complicating, but I believe this video is not complicating at all. So when you pin this and it is aligning perfectly, just as you can see right here, you have to go ahead now and follow that exact shape or that line, just the way it's going. You are going to pin on top of the other side of your shirt gown. So I believe this is clear and very understandable, right? So this is it. So after doing all of this, I'll just simply go ahead and iron this my gown, or this exact button area. I'm going to iron this flat, and after ironing, this is what I have. So the next, I'm going to move over to my sewing machine so that I can show you all how to stitch this actually. So now, just like I pinned initially, like I showed you guys, I'm going to remove all these pins and stop exactly on my half length, which is right there at that point. Okay, so all I'm going to do right now is that I am going to shift or move away the other side of my shirt, and I'm going to turn this way. So you can see I'll turn this way, and exactly on that point where I started stitching from my half length downward, I'm going to run a stitch like this. Okay, so I just turn this way, and I'm just going to stitch. So make sure that it's exactly on your half length, like the point where you started stitching all the way. Okay, so right there you see how I stitch, and I'm going to flip this now, and I'm going to stitch exactly on the fold which I had. Okay, so the fold is actually underneath, right? So towards the neckline area. Okay, so in a straight stitch, just a very straight stitch. Okay, so when I was done stitching this right now, I'll bring the other side of my shirt, and I'm going to place this part that is overlapping my shirt on top this way. So arrange it properly, please make sure there are no folds underneath. Okay, so by the time I brought it together, I now stitched it together. So this will enable these two parts to be closed properly by the time you fix your button. So this is what yours should also look like. It's giving this scrub suit v neckline, something of that, but that's not what it is, please. So after that, now I'm going to follow the line. You see that line where I stitch? I'm going to follow it around the stitch all the way down to the hem of this my gown. So remember, just have a proper look and closer look on the part where I'm stitching this. I'm not stitching this on the other side, I'm stitching this at the parts, okay, where I actually use the other side to overlap. All right, so if you're actually having issues stitching this, because I was having these excess folds, so all I did at the end of the day was actually ironing this flat with my hemming gum so that it can stick to the other side, because this my fabric was a little bit stretchy. All right, so that was what I did. And if I had known after ironing with my hemming gum, I wouldn't have gone ahead to also stitch as well. So that's actually by the way, but this is what I meant, right? So why, if you iron your hemming gum underneath, please don't go ahead to stitch, because it will give you these folds. All right, So after all of that, now I'm going to join the front and the back part of my shirt. So on the shoulder, I pin the front part and the back part of my dress or my gown. So make sure that the armhole aligns. So at this point, when you when you bring the two armholes together, you realize that the back shirts will kind of move forward to the front part of your shirt, like on the shoulder. So that is actually how it is supposed to be. Okay, so arrange it on the sides, and you see my pocket automatically aligns. So you're going to pin all around the pockets and the sides of your gown, because at this point you are going to join, right? We join the shoulder, we stitch around the pocket and also at the base. So this is everything which we are going to do right now. So I actually stitched with just 1 inch for the sides. For the shoulder, I stitched using 1/2 an inch. Okay, so you are going to mark your chalks, and when you get to that your pocket, you're going to stitch just this way I've shown you right here at both sides. And when I did all of that, guys, this is what I had. So you just have to give this a very good and nice pressing and ironing, and you can see what we have right here. So the next thing I'm going to do is to actually work on the back neckline, because it was very small. I mean the neck depth. Okay, so I'm actually going to fold this way on the shoulder, and now come down by 1 inch on the neckline this way. I'm going to create a curve, but I'm not going to let that affect the shoulder. Can see how I cut that off. So if you notice that your neckline is actually too small, just go ahead and alter this a little slightly. So I actually reduced this more by increased this by 1/2 an inch. So you see how I folded this, and I went ahead to also cut away 1/2 an inch from this. So please, I didn't alter or tamper with the neckline, sorry, the shoulder. So guys, in the second part of this tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you all how to cut your bishop collar, how to fix your ruffles, how to fix your collar to this dress, how to also achieve your gathers. So it was quite a long tutorial. Thank you all so much for watching. See you in the next one.